The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Building Morale in Uncertain Times, presented by Lori Richards. I am Jen Huber with ADC National and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be posted on National Connections later today. Please note that your line is muted. You are welcome to submit questions throughout the webinar by typing in the question box located at the bottom of the sidebar and then clicking the send button. We'll get to as many questions as possible. You also can minimize and expand the GoToWebinar sidebar by clicking on the red arrow in the top left-hand corner. Now I'd like to turn it over to our friend Lori Richards.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all today. Hey, in addition to be able to control your control bar today to make it a little larger, you can also make my face larger or smaller as the case may be. One of the things that we know about these virtual webinars is that there's significantly greater impact and engagement if you get more of the speaker and less of the PowerPoint. So to make it easier on yourself and to get a little more engagement and a little more interaction out of this, take advantage of that. Just take that screen that has my picture on it and expand it a little bit so I'm not an itty bitty picture, but so that I look like an actual person in there so that you can still see the PowerPoint, but you've got my face in there, and that could make a difference in how we connect. And connecting is such an important piece when you're trying to boost morale, when you're trying to control morale. In the best of times, 2 out of 3 people hate their jobs. 2 out of 3 people hate their jobs in the best of times. Now what we have is extremists on both ends that look a little bit different, because you have people who are scared to death, they're concerned, and so they're worried about their jobs. You have other people who are just happy to have a job. So one of the things that you're going to learn today is how to manage people through something like this, through chaos that we have right now. The reality is that in every situation, there is predictable morale. There's an actual cycle that we go through, and you're going to learn about that cycle today, so that you can not only help others through this, but so that you can help yourself. Because the more you understand about what you're going through, and we all are, the more we understand that, the better we can get through it, and the better we can help others to get through whatever it is that we're trying to in terms of this. So you're going to see a 4-stage cycle of morale, and you're going to walk through some examples of this, and you're going to be able to find yourself in this as well. And once you know and understand what stage you're in, you're also going to learn how to help yourself and others through that. Be sure to use the question box or the chat box for any questions you have and any conversation. And folks, talk to each other. You don't have to use the chat and the questions just for me or just for Jen. Talk to each other, share ideas, ask for follow-up with one another. That's what that chat box is for. Use it the same way that you would with any kind of an in-person meeting, as an opportunity to chat. Just know other people can read it, okay? So let's talk about morale. The morale curve, just as a startup, was determined by a Dr. Walter Menninger. And it was created many years ago, but he has since done research that validates it even in today's kind of chaos. And what happened was Dr. Menninger was brought in when John F. Kennedy was president many years ago. And what was happening was they were sending a bunch of kids out to work in the Peace Corps. And 6 months later, the White House was getting letters, and half of the letters were saying, wow, this is the most amazing experience I've ever had. And other letters were saying, what in the world is going on here? Why did you put me out here? Why did you put me out here with next to nothing? Because what happened was that they were given next to no training, 2 or 3 days training, and then they were sent out and they were going to pack their duffels and go out in the tarmac and get on the airplanes and go out to the ends of the earth. And some of them handled it really well. They picked themselves up by their bootstraps and they said, this is the most amazing experience in the world. Thank you for this amazing opportunity. And others said, this is crazy. You're not paying me enough to do this. I'm going home. This is crazy. And they looked at this and they said, why in the world do we take 2 people with very similar backgrounds, put them in very similar situations, give them the exact same training, and why do some of them come out smelling like a rose and others of them come out literally depressed and even suicidal? So they brought in Dr. Walter Menninger to look at the situation, and he identified that we actually go through a cycle, a curve, And when we understand the stages of that curve and we understand what to do in each of those stages, it can make all the difference in the world, not only for your own morale, but for the morale of others. Keep in mind that if you do the wrong thing in any one of those stages, you will actually work against it instead of for it. So what works in one stage doesn't always work in the next stage. So it's really critical to keep in mind that you need to know what stage you're in and what stage they're in so that you can understand how to manage through. So let's take a look at each of these stages. This is the stage of arrival. Now you notice on the left hand there, you have the words morale. Consider that across the line, let's consider that at 0 level. This is neutral. But anything above the line is going to be high morale, and anything below the line is going to be negative morale. And the point of arrival is when something happens. This is the day we found out there was a coronavirus. This is the day you moved into the new house, the day you got the new car, the day you got your new job. This is the day you hired someone thinking, oh, this is going to be the answer to my prayers. This is the day you fired someone that you thought was a problem. So this is when anything new happens. This is the point of arrival. Now you notice that the point of arrival is above the line. The research shows us that even in the worst of times, our morale tends to take a little bit of a spike up, even in the worst of times, even when it's a bad thing. So as an example, let's go back a while and let's look at 9/11. When 9/11 happened, it was just a horrible day for us. But when 9/11 happened, watch what happened around the country. We all went out and talked to our neighbors, and they can't do this to us, and oh my gosh, we're Americans, and everybody went out and bought a flag, and we're hugging people we don't even like, and we're going to church, and we're community, and we're gathering together. A lot like what's going on right now, isn't it? We're in this together. That's the first thing you saw as soon as this started hitting New York. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. That's that morale of the country coming up, and you can't do this to us. You can't keep us down. And that's what tends to happen when something bad happens. Now, let's take a corporation that lays off a bunch of people or maybe furloughs a bunch of people. I know some of you chapters are going through this right now where you're having to lay some people off. Certainly, you've got some members that are having to go through this. The first day when that happens, the mindset of the people who keep their jobs tends to be, at least it wasn't me. So their morale goes up. And the person who leaves the job, just like the day you were told you didn't have to come in tomorrow, it's, wow, I don't have to come in tomorrow. That's the honeymoon stage. Think of this as the day you met that special someone, right? Oh man, I used to be married, and I remember the day I met him. Wow, tall, dark, and handsome. Oh my God, good sense of humor, funny, sensitive. Oh wow, isn't this great, right? And that's the honeymoon stage. That's arrival. And then one day, oops, comes the next stage. This is where reality hits. They call it the stage of engagement. Think of it as engaging to the bottom, hitting bottom. That's what the point of engagement is. And it's in the stage of engagement where all of a sudden things are bad. This is where we wake up one morning and we go, oh, this isn't perfect. This is the stage that we're in right now with coronavirus. This is people are angry, they're frustrated, they're afraid, they're hurting. This is the bad stuff. This is the honeymoon is over and all the stuff is off. All the gloves are off. This is trouble. And you'll be able to identify yourself in this as well as others. This is a time when you're going to find that people are blaming, they're angry, they like to point fingers. They'll scream and holler. They're frustrated, they're hurting, and they're all focused on the past. It's all about if they wouldn't have done this, if he wouldn't have done that, if she wouldn't have done that. This is if the Republicans would only, if the Democrats would only, if senators would only, if this would only, if my mother would only, if my father would only, if whatever. This is where we blame everyone for something, okay? Now, in some cases, what we do is we blame ourselves. Oh, I'm such a loser. If I wasn't such a loser, no one would do this to me. If I was better, I would be able to handle this, but I'm not good at this. So if it's not their fault, it must be my fault. But in that point of engagement, what you'll find is that it's somebody's fault. And you just want to expect this going in. So the point of arrival is, woohoo, isn't this great? Honeymoon stage, congratulations, you got a new project. Engagement is, and now you have to work weekends and you don't get paid extra. Okay, so arrival is, they can't do this to us, we're going to weather through this. Engagement is, oh my gosh, we have to lay people off. Oh my gosh, I'm the one getting laid off. Oh my gosh, we're going to lose members. Oh my gosh, my members are having trouble here. Oh my gosh, there's a neighbor who's sick. This is when reality hits. They're scared, you're frustrated, you're angry, and there's a lot of blaming going on. Interestingly, at this level, at the point of engagement, people can't hear. All you got to do is turn the news on and you'll see this. When people get angry and frustrated, the logic of someone else coming in and sharing their logic, they can't hear it. They're still frustrated. It doesn't solve my problem. And all they want to do in that stage is vent. Let's go through the remaining stages, and then you'll get some tips for how to handle each of these stages depending on where you are. Okay. The next stage is the stage of acceptance. This is the point of acceptance. Now you'll notice that we go from down in the engagement all the way up, and look at how high that acceptance is. It's because the acceptance stage is where we accept, this is the control I have and I'm going to exercise this control. It's at this point that we realize that if it's going to be, it's up to me. It's at this point that we realize that we have some control here and we can actually exert that control. And we've got every situation where we can we can have one of at least three choices, We can either accept things the way they are, we can change, but just a clarification here, folks, you can't change other people. You can't change other people. You can make it easier for them to change. You can make it more painful for them not to change, but you can't change other people. For those of you who still think you can change other people, I hope your second marriage works out a little better. But if you could change other people, your parents wouldn't drink, they wouldn't smoke, they would be the perfect weight, they'd take great care of themselves. Because most of us care about our parents more than anyone else, except maybe your children. I don't have children, but we care about our parents and we want them to have the very best. We can put all the information out in front of people that we want. We can have all the logic that we want, but without that, you can't change them. All you can do is make it easier for them to change, or you can make it more painful for them not to change. But you can change you. You can change your approach. You can change your perspective. You can change the way you talk to people, the way you respond to people, the way you react to people, the way you listen to people, the way you vent, or the way you don't vent. So we can change ourselves. Sometimes we can change our situations. I live in Northern Virginia. And people who live in my neighborhood, if they commute down to Washington, D.C., it's only about, 25 miles. So on a good day, like on a day like today, they just get in their car and go, and in 30, 35 minutes, they're downtown at an office building. But if they're commuting down there every day and fighting traffic on 66 East every day, it could take an hour and a half without even trying. That's just regular traffic. So if the complaint is, and the frustration is the commute, they're making the decision, like it or not, they're making a decision that they're going to live here and they're going to commute down there. One of the changes they could make is to move. Now, some of you right now are going, no, Lori, I can't change. I can't change where I live. Well, you can, but you may not like the ramification of that change. You may not like the cost of the change. And so sometimes it's not that we don't or aren't able to change, it's that we don't like what we have to pay for that change. Do I have to live in a house I don't like, live in a smaller house, pay more for the house, whatever it is that causes that change or that allows us to make that change? What we don't want is necessarily the cost associated with that. Another option we have is we can leave. You can just quit your job. Look, some of you are going, no, I can't do that either. Yeah, you can, but it's a great cost. And that's what you really want to look at. What I think is interesting about this, and you might find it as well, is that in every situation in life, you have these choices. The great thing is you get to set the price. When the price of accepting something is too great, you make a different choice. When the cost of changing is too great, you make a different choice. When the cost of leaving is too great, you make a different choice. I would submit to you that there are a lot of people who are doing not just the commute in Virginia, but in a lot of places where there's a long commute. And they're going through this experience with this pandemic, and they're going to look up one day and the boss is going to say, okay, it's time for everybody to go in. And some of them are going to say, I am not doing that commute. I'm not doing it. I'm making a different choice. And a lot of them will stay home. They'll work remotely. Some of them might quit. Others of them are going to get in that vehicle and they're going to do that hour and a half commute and they're going to commute home again. So it's going to be different, but this is forcing us, some of us have moved into this stage where we're actually accepting that, okay, I'm going to accept that I need to be home alone. I'm going to accept that I can't go to the grocery store, that I got to order Instacart so they can pick out the bananas, even though I really like to, pick out my own fruits and vegetables. I have to let them do it so I'm not exposed. Or I have to make different choices about where I can go and what I can't do. Or I can say, no, I'm not going to change. I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to do any of this. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to protest and I'm going to say, no, this is not acceptable. But the price to each of us is going to be a little different. And what's really great is you get to set that price. This is a time during this program where there are probably light bulbs going off in some of your heads. And you're going, oh my gosh, I get this. And for a lot of us, it's where the light bulb goes off for someone else. Meaning, gosh, if my employees would only understand this, gosh, if my membership would only understand this. The thing is, it's a really hard thing to push people up into that point of acceptance. Many people are down here in engagement and they just can't hear you. They can't think about it like this. Think about the last conflict that you had. Is it fair to say that at least one of you couldn't hear? I'm sure it wasn't you. But I suspect that during the last conflict that you were in, one of you couldn't hear because we're so busy making our own points that all of a sudden the other information doesn't get in. The logic of another argument just doesn't get in. So it's at the point of acceptance where what happens is we understand that we're capable of doing things and we feel like super people. We feel like, oh my gosh, I can decide. One time I was getting on an airplane. And the woman who was taking our tickets, she just couldn't have been happier. And a lot of you travel, a lot of you are on airplanes a good share of the time. And you know that that's got to be a nasty job, doesn't it? That you have to smile all the time, even though some people are just not happy travelers. and I asked the woman, you sure are happy today. And she said, every ticket I take, I say to myself, thank you for paying my bills. Thank you that I get to live in a nice house. Thank you for buying me a new pair of shoes last week. Thank you for paying for my kids' education. And she was looking at taking all of the flack from the nasty travelers. She was looking at it as, I'm going to accept the fact that I get paid and the cost that it costs me to have the house I live in, the shoes that I wear, my kids' education, where it is, the car I drive, all of these things, the cost is I got to deal with these nasty customers sometimes. So accepting it can really change someone's mindset. Now, interestingly, once somebody accepts that they accept a situation, they can change or they can leave. What happens now is we get to the point of what's called reentry. And it's at the stage of reentry where now it's a bit of a crapshoot. We don't know if the person's going to go up or down. So people get into a situation, they come down to the point of engagement, they hit bottom, they hit rock bottom and frustrated and angry and blaming and ticked off. And then they come up and they say, okay, I got to do something about this. I either have to accept it, I can change, or I can leave. And then what happens is they get to this point of reentry, and some of them will continue up and they'll say, it's not so bad. It's just part of doing business. It happens. Other people will go down. Now, the folks going down, these are the people, and you know them. You've got some in your offices. You've got membership. You've got people in your families that are like this. They are just not happy unless they're not happy, right? The only way they're happy is if they're complaining about something. And that's a person who on reentry likes to come back down. You're not going to change that person. You can't change this person. This is a person that's just who they are. And what will happen is the more you try to change that person, the more unhappy you will get. So understanding each of these stages within the cycle is really important. So let's help you guys work through this. When you get to that point of reentry, some people are going to use it as a building block and some people are just going to find excuses. So let's talk about how to deal in the point of arrival. In the point of arrival, you want to remember, you notice that on the chart that you were shown, the curve, that it was very high. In the point of arrival, the most important thing to do is to manage expectations. And when you manage expectations, what that means is, remember, the higher they are, the lower they fall, the harder they fall. Okay. So that means that when you're talking to people about the point of arrival, okay, we're going to close the offices and everyone's going to work from home. Initially, it could very well be a, hoo-hoo, I'm working from home. Isn't this great? Now is when you have to show them the other side of things. You got to show the perspective. While they're looking at one, you've got to be willing to show them the other side of the coin and show them, yes, I know it looks like this from your perspective, but you need to know here's the other piece. So this would be in your situation with remote workers. It might be something like, yes, you're going to work from home. Now, just so you know, you're still going to need to be able to answer the phone. 2 rings, that's the rule around here. By the second ring, everybody answers the phone. You're going to need to be able to answer the phone within 2 rings from 10 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 hour for lunch. Okay, you're still expected to get the books done. You're still expected to do the paperwork. You're still expected to do this. And it may actually take you more time because you're going to be dealing with your computer at home, which may not have the accessibility that you like it to have. Here's the bad news. On the job for some of your members, this is that day they get the new project, but now you've got to show them both sides. Yes, folks, we won the project. We won this bid. I work with a lot of companies on how to win new business. And they'll go home and, oh, yeah, we got this new business. Yeah, we got this new business, but they took a look at our budget and they cut it this much. And that means we can't afford 5. We've got to do it with 4. That means we've got it, and the only way we won this was by agreeing to have a shortened schedule. Or, yes, we've got this, but it means that a good share of you are going to have to live in a trailer 180 miles away and not be with your family for the next 3 months, or whatever it is. So when they're in the point of arrival, this is when you show them both sides of the coin. Okay, make sure you're showing them both sides of the coin. As you look at that, then now the higher they are, the lower they fall, but they're still going to get into engagement. And again, this is where we are right now in terms of the coronavirus. If you turn on the news just the last couple of days, everybody's mad. You got protesters everywhere screaming and hollering, and it's somebody's fault. It is the president's fault. It's a governor's fault. It's a mayor's fault. It is China's fault. It is somebody's fault. Everybody's mad. And I get that the news doesn't always show a real picture of everything, but I also know that it's creeping into neighborhoods. You're hearing it around the neighborhoods. I noticed it out my back window. The first few days that everybody was home, oh, there was chalk art all over the streets. And oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that great? Everybody's spending time with their families and doing fun things outside. And right about now, all the parents that are on here are saying, my temper is getting up to here. I've had it up to here because they're tired. It's exhausting helping kids homeschool and try to take care of that stuff. And for a few days, this was new and it was different. And now it's just plain frustrating because we're not doing what we think we need to be doing. And somebody's in trouble around here. So this is an area that we want to make sure that we have clear feeling about this. And your instinct is probably to push people up to this level of acceptance, to push people out of the dredges, the point of engagement, and push them up that hill into acceptance. But very, very difficult to do that because, again, remember, in the point of engagement, people can't hear. In the point of engagement, what they want is they want you to listen. They want you to listen. They want to vent. They want to scream and holler, and they want you to hear them. They want to be validated. They want to know that you get their frustration. And you've seen it before, probably even as a customer. You ever been a customer where you're just frustrated about something and you call and you say, I don't understand why this is like this. And you know, my computer's not working or my car won't start or whatever it is. You're complaining about whatever it is. You called, you need help. And they say, calm down. And you think, I'll show you calm down. Because when we're in that point of engagement, when we're frustrated and angry, what happens is if the other person doesn't match us or come very close in our emotions to matching us, what we think is you don't get it. And if you don't get it, I'm going to tell you again, just louder and slower. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to, in that point, you want to really focus on letting them vent, letting them have their say, letting them tell you where they are and what's going on and why this is so frustrating. They just want to be heard. Do this in your poll box. Let's see if we can find that. In your dashboard, you can see that there's a place where you can take a poll. Let me find it here. And let's let you guys take a poll and just answer. You're going to answer 2 questions one at a time. The first one is, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your staff's morale? As a group, on the average, what would you say your staff's morale is in terms of morale, with 1 being very low morale and 10 being very high morale? Let's see. Oh, good. Okay, good. You can put this in the poll. I see a lot of you showing in the questions and the question in the chat box. Go ahead and jump over there to the poll, or on the poll there, and click on there too, if you will. Give you just another couple of seconds here. It looks like a lot of you have voted. Almost everyone. We've got several of you, again, voting in the chat box, which is fine. We can do the math, or you can jump on there and put it in the poll. Ooh, I like some 10s. Okay. Looks like we got almost everybody up there. We got a huge portion of you up there. So let's take a look at some results here. Let's share your results. Okay, look at that. This is really encouraging, you guys. This is really great to see. And I suspect that if I said to you, what's the person with the lowest morale, what's their morale, the person with the highest morale, what's their morale, some of you might have additional 10s, some of you might have additional 1 to 3s. Got a lot of 4 to 9s, mostly 7 to 9s. Those 7 to 9s, those feel good. Those are a really, really healthy place to be. Anybody that thinks that you want to work for your morale to be 10 all the time, that's just plain delusion. So you don't want that. You don't want a 10 all the time. You can have a 10 on a good day. I mean, that's great to have a 10 on a good day. But reality is that most of us are going to have a morale in the middle there. So a 4 to 6 is pretty good. Could do some work there. You want to ask yourself why their morale is there, what's going on. The prescription, if you answered 4 to 6, and you feel like it's 4 or 5 as opposed to 6 or 7, which the most important thing you can do right now, especially in this situation, is listen. In fact, in any situation, there's a reason people have low morale. Unless this is one of those people who comes down after they go to re-entry, you want to really listen. People have low morale because they believe that they don't have control or that nobody gets them. When you look at the suicide rate, and in construction, we have a suicide problem. There's no question. Suicide for construction or people in construction is very typically in the top 2 or 3 items or industries or occupations, depending on how they're measuring. Sometimes they measure industry, sometimes they measure occupation. Very commonly, suicide construction is one of those top 2 or 3. So there's definitely a problem. And if you talk to people who have been through any kind of suicide experiences in any way, shape, or form, what you'll learn is the number one thing that a person says is the lack of hope. I feel like there's no hope. And so very commonly, people with very low morale are in that area where they feel there is no hope. So one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that they get that you hear them. I hear you. You don't have to agree with them. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. In your shoes, I might feel some of these same things. Those are the kinds of things you say when you're empathizing. But they want to know that you're hearing them. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. And this is, how would you rate your members' morale? How would you rate your members' morale? So it looks like in staff-wise, you're in pretty good shape. You got a good bunch that are above that 6 mark, which is pretty good. But let's take a look at your members and see what happens there. Again, you can vote on the screen. Let's see what you guys put in there. It's a race 50-50 right now, you guys. I'm watching the progress of it. Almost the same number of people have already voted on this one. So let's see. I'm going to close it simply because we have more now that have voted than in the last one. So let's show you what you're seeing here. Look at this. This is interesting because people are telling me nobody is a 1 to a 3 and nobody is a 10. Everybody is right smack dab in the middle. And you got a 50-50 there, right smack dab in the middle. Now, again, I suspect that if we walked around and talked to individual members, that we would find some that are 1s and we would find some that are 10s, depending on what kind of work they do, how large their organization is, how they're able to respond, where they live geographically. All of those pieces will bring that in. But it tells me that your members are about where they can be expected to be right now. Now, what it doesn't tell us is a shift in the morale. And my experience is I've talked to a lot of people out there. We have a lot of, many of you know, I have a lot of clients in construction. I've been on the phone with almost all of them at this point. And it's a mixed bag. It really is. I would say the 4 to 6, I've got a couple that are 4s. I got a lot of them that are in the 7 and 8 area that I would put them simply because of the kind of work they do and where they live. So I think that depends, on a lot of different factors. It is important that you can tell if you're talking to your membership, because the way you manage them through it is going to be really critical here. So let's take a look at where we go from here. Okay. When you see people who are down in the point of engagement, this is in low morale, what you want to be thinking about is how to boost them up. Okay. And you want to start thinking about intrinsic versus extrinsic. Intrinsic is internal fulfillment. Extrinsic is reward or recognition that comes from outside. It's things, it's pay. Now, this is not to say that you shouldn't pay people. That's not true at all. You need to pay people. You need to pay people a fair wage. And especially right now where there are some people who are losing their jobs. Again, I'm finding a lot of the construction companies are not laying off a lot of people. Because I know that it's considered essential in some areas, not essential in some. So there are some furloughs, and when people need money, it's the only thing they can think of. It's the only thing on their mind. When there's not enough money, it's the only thing they can think of is I got to find a way to feed myself. I got to find a way to feed my family. I got to find a way to pay the bills. So they can't even hear anything else. But the research says that once we reach a certain level of money, and that level is I can pay my bills this month. It is not I can pay my bills off. It is I can pay my bills this month. So you might have a mortgage of $250,000 and your mortgage payment this month is $1,000, as long as you can pay that $1,000. But if you can't pay that $1,000, it tends to be the only thing people can think of. So if you're laying people off, or if people aren't getting their relief checks, or if people don't have savings or whatever it is, all they can think of is money. Now, after we satisfy that, so once a person can pay off today's bills, again, not pay the mortgage off, not pay the credit cards off, but pay the minimum there. Once we can do that, the research says that extrinsic rewards, extrinsic experiences are less valuable and not very meaningful. Think of it like this. If you go to work and your greatest frustration is that you got to work with Billy Bob, and Billy Bob's an idiot, and they come to you and they say, extra $100 a day. Man, you go home with champagne. Good for me. Point of arrival, extra $100 a day. Isn't this great? Until you got to work with Billy Bob. And then the minute you got to work with Billy Bob, you slide down that curve to that point of engagement. And then the talk in your head tends to be, you don't pay me enough to work with Billy Bob. That $100 a day isn't enough to work with Billy Bob. So you really got to be careful with extrinsic rewards. The research says that pay raises, in terms of putting that little sparkle in someone's eye, the pay raise that sparkle lasts less than a month. And it is because unless paying the bill is the thing you're solving, money doesn't solve it. And as soon as you run into whatever that problem is, whether it's Billy Bob or a commute or being away from your family or traveling or whatever it is, the minute you got to do that, all of a sudden that $100 a day or whatever it is, all of a sudden it just doesn't seem quite as important, as not worth the cost of dealing with whatever it is that was your other problem. So you want to go for intrinsic. Internal rewards are things, excuse me, like appreciation, showing people that you care about them, showing people that they matter, that they do good work, showing people that validating their feelings, showing them empathy, not sympathy, not apathy. There are a lot of people that believe that feelings have no place in the workplace. I'm just going to tell you that's a very old way of thinking. And there was a time where maybe that worked when people had to have a paycheck, where today the whole society is around recognizing that people like different ways of working. They liked working with different tools and doing different things, and they want to feel like their work is meaningful. So you want to show some empathy. I'm fascinated at how many emails I'm getting that start with, "I hope everything's okay." And that's just someone showing, just hoping everybody's okay out there. Intrinsic is showing gratitude. I just appreciate you coming in today, because I know not everybody can. I appreciate that you took time away from the kids to do whatever it is. I appreciate that you dropped this off. I appreciate that you did this. Now, your appreciation should be sincere. It should be meaningful, and it should be sincere. The research says that a false compliment or false praise is more hurtful than honest criticism. False praise is more hurtful than honest criticism. People take it and all of a sudden they feel like they can't trust you because you said thank you, or you said nice, nice pair of glasses, whatever, good job on this, and they feel like you didn't mean it. And if they feel that it's inauthentic or that it's not true, that actually hurts the relationship even more. Internal stuff, intrinsic stuff, this is kindness. It's showing that you actually care. It's saying, I hear where you're coming from. I can't even imagine what this would be like if I had kids in school. I can't even imagine what this would be like if I still had to go to work, or if my spouse had to go into the hospital in a time like this. I can't imagine. Those kind of things are saying, I'm listening to you. I understand what you're saying to me. Not I agree, not pour you, but simply I hear what you're saying. So when people are down here, that's what they need. They need to feel like they're being heard. That's the most important thing here. Really important to understand that the paycheck is important. There's no question, especially when the option is no paycheck, or when all of a sudden people are cut off, and that can affect people in a bad way. Gift cards would be external. A jacket, a Carhartt jacket, something like this. These would all be external. Buying them lunch, buying them, pizza. Those can be all can be external. We're not saying don't do that. Those are really nice things, and they feel good. And if you just need a quick boost of morale, that's a good way to just do a quick boost, but it's not long-term. Instead, intrinsic is appreciation. One of the biggest, most important things you can do, especially when people are low morale, is you can give them choices. The number one cause of low morale, number one cause, is a feeling of a lack of control. Not a lack of control, a feeling of a lack of control. So as a manager, you might be thinking, well, I let them make all sorts of decisions. But when they make a decision and bring it to you and you change it, what they understand is, I wasn't allowed to make that decision. Someone else made the decision because I chose blue and he turned around and made it purple. So that wasn't control. It is so easy. This is one of the easiest things to do, is to give people control. And what I mean by that is choice. As opposed to you deciding which restaurant to order lunch from, let them decide. Instead of you telling them what training they need to take or what skills they need to develop, ask them. 9 out of 10 times you're going to get the right answer. If you think someone needs to learn to listen better, and you say to them, what kind of a class do you want to take this year? And they say, well, I was thinking maybe a leadership class, maybe better communication. I think a communication class would be really good. Which part of communication do you think you want to work on? You know what? It might be a good idea to do listening as well. I mean, you a lot of times are going to get the same kind of answers from them as you want to. But when they think it's their idea, When whomever you're dealing with believes it's their idea, all of a sudden they take that control back. And the more control they feel like they have out of their own lives, the higher their morale goes. Even in a case where they don't like the answer. Let's go back to that concept of hitting bottom and then going up to the top. Even in a situation where we get up to that point of acceptance and we understand that I can accept, change, or leave, even if I don't like the cost, I know in my head I can change my answer. Instead of accepting this, I can change. Instead of changing, I can leave. Instead of leaving, I can accept. So when we understand that we have that power, it makes all the difference in the world. So allow them to make some of those choices. Take a look again at what happens when you allow a person to make some of these choices. They go up to where it's that point of acceptance. One of the most important things to watch for when people are in this point of engagement, when they've hit bottom, one of the most important things to watch is that focus on the future. See, the big difference between engagement and acceptance is the focus. People in engagement are focusing on the past. Who should we blame? Whose fault was this? You always do this. They always do this. It's always been this way. See, that's all the past. Someone did this to me or I did it to myself, but it's all in the past. The minute we move to the future, it becomes, what can I do? See how we're taking that control back. What can I do? What should I accept? Should I change? Should I leave? All of a sudden, there's a huge shift in our thought process. So you want to do that for your staff and your membership. You want to help sort of push them up that road. But the way you do that is not by solving their problems or by giving them answers. See, when someone's down here, remember we said they can't hear, and you're going to give them an idea, and now you're going to ruin them for life if you try to solve their problems. You're going to say, well, if you just get up a little earlier, well, if you just go for a walk, well, if you wouldn't eat this or you would eat this, well, if you'd talk to this person, well, if you'd do things differently. And they say, oh, but I can't. Oh, but I can't. Oh, but I can't. Now, you know they can. They just won't, right? And you're going to keep giving them ideas. Oh, but I can't. Oh, but I can't. And they have all these reasons, all these excuses for what they can't do. The challenge is that every time you give them an idea and they say they can't, they're going to plant their stake. And the research says that once we take a stand on something controversial, oh, but I can't, whatever it is you suggested, boom, I've planted my stake. And now what happens is whenever a person plants their stake, they stop listening to the logic around things. And what they do instead is they cherry pick whatever supports them. They just cherry pick. There's research that says that when it was in 1964, I believe, was the presidential election, they did a survey of 3,000 people in Ohio. And one of the questions they asked on this survey is, do you believe that abortion should be legalized in some circumstances? And it was done in Ohio. The research was done in Ohio. And 63% of the people said yes. 63% in 1964, I believe it was. 63%. Then they asked, how strongly do you believe this? And they said 1 would be, well, whatever. And 10 would be, yes, by gosh, we got to have this, right? And the average number was 4. So in the early 60s, people said, 63% of the people said, yeah, probably. But it was kind of a, well, okay. They did the same research the first year that President Obama was elected president. They asked the exact same question to the exact same counties, the exact same number of people. So it was as much apples to apples as it could be, understanding that, there are certain things we can't control. The exact same number of people said yes. 63% of the people said yes. And then they asked the question on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, whatever, and 10 being, by gosh. The average number was 8. So as a society, it went from, yeah, whatever, to, by gosh, this is the way it has to be. And Harvard says that this is an example of confirmation bias, that when we take a position on something, we stop listening to all the information and we cherry pick. And so when we're watching something on television, we go, oh yeah, see, that's my guy. Look what he said. Or I hate that guy no matter what that guy says. You can't believe it. So it doesn't matter which side of the fence we sit on. Most of us are subjected to this. So what happens now is you tell someone how to solve their problem. And you say, well, if you just get up earlier, if you just stay up later, if you just move faster, if you just move slower, whatever it is, if you just do things like this, I will solve your problem for you. They don't want to do that. So they plant their stake. And now for the rest of their lives, they will justify why that was a bad answer. Why? Well, of course I can't get up early, da 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 da. Of course I can't do what you told me, da 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 da. Even in the absence of logic, they will convince themselves that that's a bad answer. So now you've ruined them for life. So instead, the answer is to listen for one single thing that focuses them on the future. Where you'll see it happen is they'll get to talking and then they'll say, and I don't know what we're going to do next month when, and they have just opened the door to the future. It's right then where you kick that door down and you push them up, and you don't solve the problem. You don't say, here's what we're going to do. You say, you're right. What are we going to do next month when? And now they feel like they're part of a problem-solving process. They may not realize it yet, but they're headed up that thing, up that curve to a point where they can be a part of the solution and start focusing on the future, not on the past. So it starts with a change. We hit bottom, and right now in our country, that's sort of where we are. People are angry. They've gone from, we can do this, isn't this great, to, God dang it, when is this going to be over? I'm mad and I'm frustrated, and who's at fault here, and nothing's going my way. People are frustrated right now. So we've got to make that turn. And one of the things about understanding these stages is that you'll notice yourself going through it faster because you recognize it. You're able to look in the mirror and go, yep, that's me. I'm mad right now. Okay, it's time for me to start focusing on what I can do, focusing on the future, focusing down the road. And that will shift your mindset to the point where it will change your morale. Remember, the number one cause of low morale is a feeling of a lack of control. So you want to make sure that you're letting them find the solutions whenever you can, okay? Make sure that you're offering them choices where you can, and understand that typically, and I know there's very little that's typical around here lately, but typically it takes us about 18 months to go through one of these curves, completely through this. Now, that has nothing to do with how long the virus is going to last or anything else. This is just about our mood swings, as it were. Interestingly, you're going through a lot of these all at once. You're going through one because you got a new car, and you're going through another one because you're working from home, and you're going through another one because you're homeschooling your kids or whatever it is. So you're going through several at once. But you want to pay attention to the one that's sort of front of mind for you, but recognize that typically it takes about 18 months to go through this, but some people will be different. So the people in New York who work for healthcare, they went through this in one day, and maybe even in an hour, where they were thinking, somebody in healthcare is thinking, okay, I'm going to go in and help, and this is the right thing to do, and isn't this great? Crap, I can't believe what we're going through now. Okay, I got to grab on, do what I can, and now I'm going to go home. And then they start it all over again. But for a lot of your members, they might be going through this a little slower. Again, construction is affected in a very different way than some industries. So it could be a little slower, but we are seeing that people are sort of getting to the point where they're a little frustrated, they're a little bit angry. You're going to want to help them focus on the future and then move on. I know one of the biggest one of the most common phone calls I'm getting right now is how to take care through this maze, how to help companies through this, how to help organizations. In fact, I've already talked to several of maybe people who are on this call right now to ask to help them strategize how to show more value to their members, because the days of just sending out a "you should be a member here," those days are gone. We've got to sell value, 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 and there are specific things that you want to do to make sure that happens. So you're going to want to make sure that throughout this entire process, you are patient, you're empathetic, and you're persistent. The goal has to be demonstrate value, demonstrate value. So to that end, a couple of things for you. On the website, or excuse me, on the PowerPoint right here, there is a link that takes you to a handout to talk about 57 specific ideas for building morale. If you download that, it's also got my information on it, so you can reach out to me if you have any questions or any other ideas, but it's just 57 ideas, specific ideas that you can use not only for yourself, but for your membership to help build morale. And this is good, by the way, not only today, but it's good down the road too for the next time you hit something like this. So know that that's there. And if you have questions, let me know. In fact, Jen, if you want to field questions at this point, see what kind of questions we have. I don't know if you've gone through and identified any, but let's open it up for questions for just a couple of minutes here. Put them in your chat or your
just a reminder to use your question box, folks, to submit your questions. I don't see any yet, but we'll give them a moment or two.
One of the most important things, and go ahead and add your questions. I'll just give you a couple of other things to think about here. One of the most important things about this morale curve is that you not only help others through it, but you'll be able to help yourself. When I lost my soulmate, the day it happened, I know it sounds silly, but morale actually went up because it was, oh my gosh, she's out of pain. Isn't that great? And then it goes down to, oh my gosh, this is horrible and it's painful and it's terrible. And why did this have to happen and all this stuff? But then I noticed in myself the day I woke up and said, what am I going to do at Christmas time? Boom. That's when that transition happened of not, oh my gosh, but what are we going to do next? And that transition into the point of acceptance is very, very clear. You'll be able to see that transition from a focus on the past to the focus on the future. That's when you're pushing them in the right direction. So really watch for that. I don't see any questions there. Sometimes this information takes a little while to process, and you might feel like you're getting this much about something this big, and that is true. So as you go through this and you think about it and you think about how this applies, not just to you and your staff, but you personally, and also to your members and how you can do something with this, be sure to reach out to me. I think somewhere on the chat, did you guys post the links?
Yeah, Eric posted the morale builder.
Okay.
As well as your email and your email address.
Okay, so I'm just told that on the chat, in the chat area are the links to my information, Lori@LoriRichards.com. Also, because you guys are part of this, you are eligible for a 30-minute strategy session. And again, I know several of you have already reached out to take advantage of that and talk to me about some of the things that need to be taken care of. One of the things that we've been talking about is how to put cheeks in the virtual seats, because I know several of you are doing webinars with that. So happy to help with that, or whatever it is that you need. There's a link down at the bottom of your screen here, the bit.ly Richards strategy. Go on there and you can get on my calendar and we'll do a 30-minute strategy session based on what you guys need to be solving for your chapter, for your staff, for your members, whatever would help for you, even for you personally, if that works for you. Also, the link is there for the 57 morale builders. And finally, I know a lot of you have signed up and you've subscribed. Thank you to the Construction Leader Podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe. You can go wherever you get your podcasts. Go to the Construction Leader Podcast, subscribe, and you'll get the downloads. It's about a 30-minute, 35-minute podcast. And every week you get tips for how to increase your leadership and be better leaders for a variety of ways, whether it's decision fatigue or morale, or I know several people from ABC have already been featured on there, and we've got several episodes coming up. And you walk away with specific tips for how to be a better leader. And some of you might find that these are not only useful for yourself, but they're useful for your staff and a lot of your members. So take advantage of that. You finding any questions on there, Jen?
I don't see any questions.
Okay.
I think you covered everything.
Okay. Well, if you think of questions, folks, just reach out. Happy to help out. We'll leave those links up there so that if you haven't had a chance to copy those down, be sure to do that and take advantage of that so that you can help you and help your staff and help your members, and use it just as one more tool to show value for ABC and what you need to accomplish there.
And I'll also post this information on National Connections.
Super. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Lori, for a great webinar.
You're welcome. I'll talk to you folks soon.
Bye.